It's back to school time across the country. How many genders will your child share a restroom facility with? Welcome to SkyWatch TV for Thursday, August 11th, 2016. I'm Derek Gilbert. Sadly, we reached a point in American history where that is a question that parents of school children must ask as we prepare to send students back to public school. The federal government, using Title IX legislation as justification, trying to compel school districts around the country to allow transgender students to use whichever restroom or shower facilities they feel is appropriate to the gender that they feel they are on any given day. What do we do as parents? Well, one man is taking a page out of the progressive playbook to strike back, using language from Title IX and from the guidelines to Title IX sent out by the Department of Education to demand the same protection for students who want their gender identity protected and celebrated. We welcome to the program Pastor Carl Gallups. For people not familiar with Title IX, what is Title IX and how is the federal government using it to compel school districts to go along with this progressive agenda?
Yeah, okay. It's very important to understand this, and thank you for having me on your show, Derek. Title IX was passed in 1972. It was signed by President Richard Nixon then, but the mechanics of it had been in the works for over a decade. When it was finally passed, Title IX was passed as a federal law signed by the president for the purpose of gender equality. And by the way, that word gender means male and female, between male and female, gender equality in the workplace and or educational facilities or in any business or governmental office or school system that took federal or that takes federal funding. Title IX federal law requires that men and women be treated equally, and women have equal access to scholarships, to certain degree programs, they have the ability to be in the workplace without sexual harassment, equal pay for equal job, et cetera, et cetera. In other words, the federal government says, look, if you're going to take federal money, and if you're given federal grants, et cetera, then you have to create an atmosphere of gender equality. And then all of that was specified in Title IX. Now, that's how Title IX was delivered. That's how it was signed. That's the law. Now, since in the subsequent decades that it's been in existence, it's been tweaked here and there. And it's often done with a mechanism called the DCL. That stands for the Dear Colleague letter. This instrument was developed as kind of an executive order, if you will. Usually it's issued from the Department of Education or the Department of Justice. It can be issued from the White House or some authoritative federal agency that has oversight over an institution that's taking federal money. So the DCL is issued saying, this is how we interpret Title IX. And for your organization, this is what we are insisting upon. Dear colleague, here is how we're interpreting it. And there's usually a little threat attached to the DCL that goes something, I'm paraphrasing, but it goes something like this. This is how we now interpret Title IX in our changing culture and the changing conditions of the world. Title IX now also means this. And if you don't comply, then you are in danger of losing your federal funding, and you're in danger of perhaps some type of legal action against you by the Department of Justice. Now, every DCL, or Title IX executive order, if you will, every DCL begins by saying something along the lines, now this DCL is not law. However, it is considered significant guidance. And the word significant guidance is usually italicized and footnoted. And the footnote would then direct the reader to certain federal cases in the past where the DCL has been upheld as a legal mechanism for communicating their interpretation of Title IX. Now, again, the DCL is not law, but it is a letter that carries a lot of weight. It has at least an indirect threat, if not sometimes a direct threat, and it can be used to interpret, and some would even say reinterpret Title IX. And Title IX federal regulations have gone through some evolutionary processes because of this interpretation and reinterpretation process down through the years. So that's a quick education on Title IX and DCL, et cetera. Now, how does that apply to the situation at hand and what's so important to us right now? And it is this. Just prior to this summer, just a few months before this last school season ended, of course, now we're getting ready to go into a new school season, but just before the last school season ended, the Obama administration issued a DCL to the nation's public school systems. This DCL, I suppose, was addressed to superintendents. I don't know, maybe school boards. I don't know how it was addressed, but it made its way to the official heads of all the public school systems around the nation. And this DCL said, and I'm going to paraphrase for the sake of simplicity for your audience, but we'll give them a link at the end of this where they can download the actual DCL if they want to read it. It's only a couple pages long, and it is the copy of the official DCL off the government website. But the DCL basically says, dear colleague, this is significant guidance. It is not the law, but it is significant guidance. Here is how we are interpreting Title IX in relation to the transgender issue among students in your public education system. And it went on to define what a transgender is and et cetera, et cetera. But then it basically, to get to the guts of it, it said this, and I'm paraphrasing, but this is what it says. It said, you are obligated, speaking to the school system, you are obligated to protect all students physically, emotionally, psychologically, et cetera, within your care, comma, this includes transgendered students. So they're saying, so now we're going, you have, in other words, what they're trying to say is you have an obligation to protect females and males, psychologically, mentally, sexually, physically. They can't be discriminated against. See, all that's Title IX. And then it says, and now this includes transgendered students. Well, of course, the original Title IX said nothing about transgendered students or sharing bathrooms and showers and dressing room facilities. But this DCL says, basically, we're reinterpreting this. Now, that word was not used, but that's the message. We're reinterpreting this. And now we're interpreting it to mean that this also includes transgender students. So here's how you are to proceed, it would go on to say. When a student comes to a school official, and it didn't define who a school official is. I guess that could be a teacher, a principal, a school board member, a superintendent. But when a student comes to a school official, and for the sake of ease in this conversation, let's pretend now, hypothetically, that this student is a male, okay? When this student comes to a school official and says, I am in the process of transgendering. I am now identifying more with the female sex. I insist upon the ability to use the female restrooms and shower and locker room facilities and overnight sleeping facilities, et cetera, et cetera. I insist on having access to female sporting opportunities, sports, et cetera. The DCL said you must accommodate that student immediately. And the implication of the DCL, if you'll read it closely, is that the parents don't even have to be involved.
So when they say now, immediately, they mean right now with no contact to the...
Yeah. Apparently so.
This very
if
day.
You go on to... Yeah, this very day. In fact, it goes on to say that you're not allowed to really have any kind of investigative process about this. You're not allowed to refer to the student's school records regarding his past gender. In other words, he might have been there since kindergarten. He may be a senior now, and you've known him as a male through his entire school life. But all of a sudden, in his senior year, he says, now I want to identify as a female. You have to allow him to do so, according to the DCL. It says you cannot have a DNA test, a medical test, a psychological evaluation. School records don't count. You can't ask for his birth certificate. If he says, I am identifying as a female, you have to allow him this very day, apparently, immediately, you have to accommodate him and allow him access, as surreal as this sounds, access to the girls' restroom, the girls' shower, the girls' locker rooms, the girls' overnight sleep facilities. Now, see, this is something that the media is kind of fuzzying this up, covering this up, because the media often refers to this as Obama's transgender bathroom order.
Right.
Now, at the surface, for those who don't bother to research any further or read the articles any deeper, that sounds to reasonable-minded people a rather reasonable demand. In other words, what if you have a school and you have, bless his heart, a transgendered student, who needs to use the restroom? You need to accommodate him, even if he's feeling like a girl. Okay, I get that. But to mix him with the girls in the restroom, that's what people were freaking out about. They were saying, well, we can provide him a single-use facility. But what I'm saying, Derek, is even though we could wrap our minds around that a little bit maybe, what people don't know is the DCL went way further than bathrooms.
Mm-hmm.
It said you've got to allow him the shower facilities.
Right.
You have to allow him the locker rooms. You have to allow him the overnight sleeping facilities if that is applicable. And sometimes that is, even in high school, a sporting event, maybe traveling somewhere and spending the night somewhere. And so this is shocking. This is astounding. So that DCL said that. And schools started reeling over that, and school boards. Now, people had different reactions. Some school boards are rather liberal, and they just said, yeah, no problem, we'll do this. We're glad to do this. But a lot of the nation's schools, and I've said this before, I've kind of make a joke out of it, even liberals have children in school.
Yeah.
And even liberals who have a 13-year-old girl, for example, are not really wild about a 17-year-old boy
Right.
who still has boy body parts to be able to immediately shower with their 13-year-old daughter,
Right.
for example,
Yeah.
or change clothes or use the restroom or sleep in the same facility area. So people started freaking out once they understood the real message and mechanic of this DCL, using Title IX as its basis, as the law. So, and all of this stemmed from a federal court case, lower court, not Supreme Court, a federal court case wherein a student filed a suit. It was a male student. I believe it was male. It doesn't matter, but it was a student of one of the sexes, of course, saying they wanted access to the facilities of the opposite sex because they more identified now with the opposite sex. And of course, the school refused to accommodate.
Right.
That was, back then. Said, absolutely not. We'll accommodate you, but we're not going to mix you with the opposite sex just because you feel like that you're a part of that sex now. Well, the student sued and it wound up in federal court, and that court upheld the student's desire and demand. And so now, of course, the Supreme Court has stepped in here just before the presidential election, coincidentally and conveniently, and because they knew this was a hot issue.
Right.
Some 20 states suing, and school boards all over the nation are in an uproar, one way or the other, because people are suing and countersuing each other over this. Rightly so. So anyway, I've devised, as you know, because you and I have talked about this, I've devised a mechanism to give parents some relief. I call it the compliance letter. And what I did, Derek, is I used, I'm not a communist. I'm a conservative, evangelical, Constitution-loving, patriotic, ex-Florida lawman, 30-year pastor person. But I am familiar with Saul Alinsky's rules for radicals. Rule number 4 is, always, 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 every opportunity you get, use the wording of their laws against them. Now, that was Saul Alinsky's, one of his tactics for bringing down a constitutional republic. Use the wording of the law against them. And, of course, we've seen that they've been doing that over and over again.
Yeah.
Well, I studied Title IX completely, as thoroughly as I could. I studied the DCL, kept reading it over and over and over, saying, Lord, give me an understanding here. And I think that he did. Very quickly, I began to see a chink in the armor using the language of the DCL that came from the White House. And here's what I devised. I devised a letter to get into the hands of parents. And again, I'm going to paraphrase my letter. It's a page and a half, and it quotes the language of the DCL. But basically, what it says. It says, look, Title IX and DCL says that you are obligated to protect all students, physically, mentally, emotionally, psychologically, excuse me, but my daughter is an all student.
Yes.
She's in that category. And my daughter has a gender identity. And she's secure in that identity. We celebrate her gender identity, and we wish to protect her gender identity,
Right.
not only her actual physical being, but we wish to protect her mental and emotional, psychological well-being as well in this matter. Now, Title IX and DCL language says you have an obligation to protect all students, including transgender, but my daughter is not a transgender, but she's an all student. The second thing that the letter says is, so you will do that. It says, number one. Then number two, it uses the word from the DCL meant to protect the transgender student who says, well, I'm a little embarrassed to use the restroom of the opposite sex right now, so I insist upon a single user facility. I'm not comfortable with my own previous sex, but I don't want to just rush into the girls' showers right now. So you have to provide me with a single user facility. And the DCL said, if the student asks for it, then you must do all within your power to do that.
Yeah.
So my letter says, I want my daughter protected, or son, but we're using this illustration. I want my daughter protected. You are obligated to protect her. And from this point forward, I'm putting you on notice, my daughter wishes to use single user facilities, bathroom, shower, dressing room, sleeping facilities, whatever the case may be, as long as she is in your custody, you are to provide her with single use facilities.
Now,
Under
I was just going to say, my graduating class in high school had about 1,000 students. You just imagine the reaction of a school board if they get 300 or 400 parents submitting those letters saying, look, if you're going to go along with this policy pushed by the Department of Education, we are going to demand that all of our children have single user facilities. There's no way a school board could comply.
Absolutely. My point exactly.
Yeah.
My purpose exactly. The Saul Alinsky tactic. Use their wording against them. Put them in an impossible situation, or a situation that is very burdensome until they realize we've got to do something. We've got to tweak this. We've got to be fair to everybody. So I'm saying, listen, I'm not a people hater. I'm a pastor. I don't hate a legitimate transgender situation. Listen, less than 1/4% of all births in the United States result in a genetic defect that involves some therapy, maybe some surgery, because of some ambiguous sexual features in a child. That's a hurtful, sometimes embarrassing, traumatic thing for a family and for that
Absolutely.
child. I get that. I mean, my heart goes out to people struggling with that. I've talked to school officials who have dealt with this over the years. As a matter of fact, in the church that I pastor, I've been there 30 years. I've actually dealt with it twice in my 30 years within my own church and community. So I get that. And so I say, yes, we'll accommodate those kids, absolutely. But we'll provide single user facilities, and we will do all we can to minimize their embarrassment, their shame, their whatever. But we're not going to mix them with people who have a body type that's opposite of what their body type says, regardless of what their mind says they are. That's just not appropriate. And so this letter I developed, this compliance letter, is meant to do all of that. You put it into the hands of the parents, you fill it out, and I'm going to have you fill it out. And my phone was going off. That's okay. But Derek, the parent fills it out with the child's name, and it's generic, so you can fill it all out with your name, child's name. And it says to the school system, you will do this because this is Title IX. You're saying you're holding Title IX over my head for transgender students. Now I'm holding Title IX over your head for my gender-specific child. And you will protect them, every aspect of them, and you will provide them a single user facility because my daughter wants that and we want that, and we're telling you. Now, if you don't do it, we will enter a suit against you for violation of Title IX and the DCL. So I'm saying, and right now that has been downloaded, I don't know how many thousands of times. I hope way more than that by now, perhaps even hundreds of thousands, hopefully maybe millions of times. Yeah. And then these things will go all over the nation into the hands of school board superintendents, principals. They will then in turn, this will give them a tool especially those who are looking for a way to handle this in a lawful, sane manner. It'll give them a tool to send these letters in bulk to their governors, to their attorney generals, to their state school board,
Departments of education,
commissions, departments of education, and say to them, what are we going to do? In order to comply with Title IX, we have to break Title IX, or vice versa. And so it puts them in a quandary. And I've had attorneys look at this. I've had school board members look at it. I've had superintendents look at it. I've had school teachers look at it. And all of the ones that have looked at it thus far have said, look, it comes right out of the Title IX language. I don't see how they can refuse you. And so if it's just me and you and 10 of our friends submitting these letters, it won't do a thing, Derek.
Right.
But if we can get hundreds, yes, thousands, yes, hundreds of thousands of people all over the United States, maybe millions, to submit these letters with the records of their children and say to the school, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. You have got to do this.
Absolutely.
Now, in the meantime, of course, the Supreme Court has stepped in and they've issued a stay on this lower federal court ruling. Now, please don't be fooled by the media kind of reporting or misreporting or non-reporting on this issue. The Supreme Court has not overturned the Obama bathroom order. They have put a stay on it. Now, I'm convinced, I hope I'm wrong, I hope I get to come back on your show a few months from now and say, well, I was totally wrong on this. But I'm convinced it's a political ploy. I just smell a rat here. I think they tried to take this hot issue, 20 states, it's all half the nation, involved in lawsuits against the government. And I think it would give the conservatives something to point to the liberals in this presidential election and say, look what you're trying to do to our children and our schools. And I think the conservative candidate, who happens to be Donald Trump right now, could make hay with that. I think a lot of political people realize that. The Supreme Court stepped in, put a stay on it, and said, we'll deal with this. I think it's going to be conveniently dealt with after the presidential election. And I think they're probably going to uphold the lower court ruling because the Supreme Court right now is pretty much liberal. It's split, but there are a justice or two that can go either way right now. So I just think that's what's going to happen. I pray to the Lord I'm wrong. I will be willing to come back and apologize and admit I'm wrong if I am, because that's my heart's desire, is for me to be wrong in this. But I don't think I'm going to be.
Well.
So Derek, this is very serious. And I tell parents, please don't rest and say, oh, well, the Supreme Court's taking care of this. I don't need that letter. Yes, you do. First of all, listen, my name's not on this letter, the name of my church, my ministry, nothing. It's for you to use. I don't care if my name ever gets mentioned. This is not about me. Just download the letter, fill it out, use it, pass it around, make copies, send it all over the nation. Protect your children. Protect the sanity of our nation and our public school systems before it destroys lives and people. So here's the deal. Am I for accommodating a child for whatever reason they're going through a transgender? If it's a legitimate medical DNA thing, hey, I'm there. If it's this radical homosexual agenda of, we're just going to switch genders because we can, wink, wink. I've got an access into the girls' bathroom now. The president said I could go there, wink, wink. If it's that, we've got to protect our kids. And there will be people using it that way. They will be using it nefariously. And this is what we have to stop. And somebody might say, well, that's just a minuscule amount. Hey, if it happens to my daughter, that's one time too many.
Right.
So I say we must use these letters. We must force the school boards to comply, because here's the deal. Even though the Supreme Court has put a stay on it, after the election, what if your 13-year-old girl is in the shower one day and the Supreme Court rules that day? And the and 2 or 3 transgender guys, come into the principal's office and say, hey, right now, I want access.
Right. Title IX says you have to.
If they don't,
yep.
That's right. If they don't, they're in violation of Title IX, and they don't want that. So they'll get suits and federal monitors and lose their federal funding. So what if your girl's in the shower that day? So this is what I'm saying. Parents, please think about this. Get this thing, fill it out, put it in your child's records, and make your school do this. Now, in the meantime, let me give a quick illustration. I know we're probably in a hurry here, but let me give a quick illustration, Derek, of criminality, the criminal nature of this DCL, and the insanity, the nature of insaneness, the depravity of mind that's attached to all of this. I pastor a church. 30 years I've pastored one church in a community on the Gulf Coast. We have a big retreat at the end of the summer. It's a back-to-school retreat. We send 50, 60 of our students off, and we've got counselors with them, teachers, chaperones. These are adults, of course. And these people have all had criminal background checks, and we know them. We've known them for years. A lot of them are parents of our kids, et cetera. We send them off, and they have girls and boys dormitories, but they worship together, they play together, they go to Bible studies together. They're getting their heads wrapped around getting ready for another school year in a godly way. Okay, back to school retreat. Now, what if during the time that our kids were off on this retreat facility situation, and we rent this facility, what if I had made a phone call to the camp facilitator and said, look, this is Pastor Gallups. Given the fact that our kids are getting ready to go to the public schools, a lot of them, and we've got this new politically correct thing and Title IX and the Obama DCL, transgender bathroom order, et cetera, we need to prepare our kids for that. So I'm just telling you, I'm issuing the order as the senior pastor. If any young man, and it could be a young woman, but if any young man comes to a camp facilitator and says, I feel more like a female, and I felt this way all my life. I never could say anything about it, but now here we are at camp, and now Obama has issued this order. Now our culture finally accepts it. So I demand to use the girls' showers while we're on this camp, the girls' bathrooms, the girls' changing rooms, and to sleep in the girls' dormitory. Mm-hmm. And this is a 17-year-old guy. Who's had, no sexual surgery, change surgery or anything. He's just saying, I just feel more in tune with the girls, and this is what I want to do. Now, that's what the Obama DCL says to the schools. Right. You have to accommodate that kid. And there doesn't have to be parental input in this, according to the DCL. Now, the parent can be involved, but doesn't have to. It says student or parent or, guardian. But so in other words, I just issue this order. Now, they have to tell the students the order I've issued. And so one guy says, oh, my gosh, I can shower with the girls on the retreat? That's what he's thinking. So he said, maybe he comes from a broken family. He's had a terrible life. He doesn't care who makes fun of him. He goes to the camp counselor and he says, that's me. That's me. I've been dealing with this all my life, and hey, thanks for this opportunity. Now I'm finally going to get some healing. I want you to allow me access to the girl showers. And so let's say they do. And then your 13-year-old girl, Derek, comes home from our camp, church camp, and says, Dad, you're not going to believe what happened. I was in the shower. We'd been playing all day. Now it's time for showers. And the door opens, and this guy walks in. He's a senior. And he takes off all of his clothes in front of me and gets in the shower right next to me. And Dad, he sat there and showered and bathed himself in front of me. Now, your daughter comes home and tells you that. And you say, wait a minute, this happened at church camp? Yeah, how did that happen? Well, Pastor Carl called over there and told him that this is the way the world is now. And that's what could happen in the schools. And we're going back to school. So I'm just telling you, Dad, that's what happened. Now, Derek, the first thing you would do, of course, pull your family out of my church, but you would also sue us. And then you would also probably call the sheriff's office to report the facilitating of a potential sexual crime. No, what's the crime? Even if the boy didn't touch your daughter, he has disrobed in front of him. He has displayed himself in front of him. He has exposed himself. Right. He has handled himself, walked himself in front of your daughter. Well, those are criminal offenses in all 50 states, Derek. That's criminal. And so I have facilitated that and in the guise of political correctness. So it doesn't make it any less criminal. It doesn't make it any less insane. And so this is what I'm saying. Now, so the question I ask is, how can it be that your daughter who goes to my church can have criminal and civil protection in my church, but the next day, she goes to her school in the same county, right around the block from my church, and she is not afforded criminal and civil protection for the very same occurrence because Obama has said in the schools that are taking federal funds, which is all the schools now, you will do this. or we will sue you. We will put federal monitors in there. We will pull your federal funding. See, this is the quandary we're in. I'm telling you, this is potentially criminal,
Yeah.
and it is insane. It makes no sense whatsoever. But this is the world we're living in. This is why I devised this letter. I'm trying to give our parents a way to fight back legally and very simply.
We'll put links to the letter in the story that accompanies this video. You can also find it at Carl's website, carlgallups.com. And it's brilliant, using the language, the very tactics that the left has been using to control control our society through federal regulation and intervention to fight back.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And they've used it to undermine our constitutional republic and to undermine so much sanity and criminality in our land. And I'm saying, let's do the same thing. I mean, here's the DCL. We have it in our possession. There's the words. Yep. You have to protect my child, and you have to give them single-user facilities. We are now demanding our rights. And fill it out, take it in, put it as a part of your child's records, and stick by it. The alternative is that one day your little girl is going to come home, or your little boy, either way. And they're going to have some horror story to tell you, and they're going to carry that in their mind and in their psyche the rest of their life, regardless of what you do afterwards. So I'm telling parents, be proactive now. Do not take this for granted. This is serious.
Pastor Carl Gallups, carlgallups.com. Thank you very much for your time and for your work, Carl. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Derek. Thank you for having me, and God bless you.
We'll have a link to that letter drafted by Pastor Carl Gallups in the notes accompanying this story at skywatchtv.com, or just go directly to Carl's website, carlgallups.com, and look for the link there. This week on Skywatch TV, we've been talking about one of the stranger episodes in the Bible. That is the creation of the giants, the men of renown who were in the earth in those days, the days of Noah, the Nephilim of Genesis chapter 6, verses 1 through 4. They were the progeny of human women and angelic beings called watchers, we're told, in extra-biblical sources. So what do we know about these watchers? Apparently, the ancient Mesopotamians knew a lot about the watchers. They called them Apkallu. Dr. Michael Heiser explains, what do we know about them, and how did it influence the Hebrew Bible? The program airs again Saturday, 3:30 p.m. on the Victory Television Network in Arkansas and around Memphis, and Saturday night, 6:30 p.m. Central Time, at WCLF-TV in the Tampa-St. Petersburg area. This week's web exclusive from Skywatch TV, Dr. Michael Heiser talking about the origins of demons. You'll find that program available only at skywatchtv.com and the Skywatch TV channel on Roku. Your support keeps us going here at Skywatch TV. And during the month of August, our thank you for your gift of $20 or more, a couple of books for your reference library, a place at the table, 40 Days of Solidarity with the Poor, and Powerful Moments in the Presence of God, an inspiring book. We'll send those to you in Canada or the United States. For your gift of $20 or more during August, while supplies last, please log on to skywatchtv.com/donate. And while you're online, click share, click like, click subscribe wherever you find Skywatch TV. And make sure, if you've got comments or questions for us, send those right here. dgilbert@skywatchtv.com. And thank you for watching as we keep watch. Tomorrow, Sci Friday, with my best friend and wife, Sharon Gilbert. Until then, I'm Derek Gilbert, and this is Skywatch TV. Skywatch TV can help you break through the barriers of space and time and get a valuable reference library at the same time. Here's what I mean. Maybe you weren't able to attend the Rocky Mountain International Prophecy Conference in July. That's a problem of space. Or maybe you were at the conference, but you had to choose. You could only watch one presentation at a time. No way to see all 53 presentations in real time. That's a problem of space and time. But thanks to modern digital technology, those barriers mean nothing. We can take you from your living room in the future to Colorado Springs in the past to watch all 53 presentations, many of which were recorded at the same time. And that's not even including more than 24 one-on-one interviews with all the speakers who were present. When you pre-purchase the complete DVD set from the Rocky Mountain International Prophecy Conference from Skywatch TV, you'll get all 53 presentations recorded live, plus the 24 one-on-one interviews, and we will add the 5-volume Researcher's Library of Ancient Text. That alone is a $150 value. Your cost, $149.95 plus shipping and handling. This is a limited time offer. Your opportunity to travel from your living room in the future to Colorado Springs in the past and watch all 54 presentations from the Rocky Mountain International Prophecy Conference without ever leaving your comfy chair. Time and space, no problem for SkyWatch TV. Order now by calling 844-750-4985 or log on to skywatchtvstore.com.